Welcome once again to our 6 minutes of Torah together on the Parsha. This week's Parsha is Vayeshev. Is a particularly difficult one for the Jewish people as it speaks about the hatred and the dysfunction between Yosef and his brothers. And despite all the apologetics that we may offer for justifying the righteous and the just, the fact that the brothers looked upon him as a Moser, and that he was trying to destroy the family unity, or that he was trying to usurp the authority of the family of Judah, of Yehuda, that was destined to be the kings, and he was seemingly trying to take the kingship for himself. We'll leave all of that discussion and all the difficulties that are attendant with it for some other time. I'd like to focus in our short time together just on one little sentence at the beginning of the Parsha that I think is instructive in two interesting ways. First, the pasuk says in Perik Lamed Vav, in pasuk Daled, it says, "Vayiru Echav," the brothers saw, "Ki oso ahav avihem mikol Echav." The brothers saw that he was more well loved than all the other brothers. Vayisneu oso, and so they hated him. Velo yochlu dabro l'shalom. And they were not able to speak to him to peace, meaning they were not able to speak to him in a pleasant way. Rashi immediately comments and he says, despite the fact that they couldn't speak to him l'shalom, in a nice way, nevertheless, Rashi says, mitoch genusam lamadnu shivcham. From their shame, we learn their praise. And that is, Shalo dibru achas bepeva achas balev, that they didn't speak with one mouth and feel differently in their hearts, but rather they were consistent and true and straight. What you saw was what you got, despite the fact that it wasn't necessarily pleasant, but at least they were honest with their mouth and with their hearts. That's the way Rashi looks at it, and I suppose that certainly is a benefit. If someone doesn't like you, and on the outside he shows he does, but underneath is cooking up ways in which to harm you, that would certainly be more degenerative than if he just did not like you and you knew it. At least you could respond perhaps in kind. But I think another thing that we have to notice over here, when it says v'lo yachlu dabro lishalom, is a very interesting idea that is taught by the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon quotes the Gemara at the end of Brachos. The Talmud at the end of Brachos tells us that when you anifter mechavero, if someone takes leave from his friend, he should never say lech bishalom, but he should say lech lishalom. That's because when David HaMelech said to Avshalom lech bishalom, Avshalom ultimately was killed. While lech lishalom, Yisro said to Moshe, and Moshe was quite successful when he went to Egypt to save the Jewish people. And so we always say to someone, lech lishalom, go to peace. The brothers were not able to say to Yosef lishalom. They were not able to tell him to go and do more, to go and bring peace, because they hated him so they couldn't bring themselves to say lech lishalom, go and do more peace and bring more peace. The other idea that I think is very important to bring out is that even though they were wrong in hating him, yet there are times when someone may feel compelled to dislike another Jew because, let's say, they are devoid of any good performance of commandments. I think there are two things that need to be mentioned here. Number one, Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz mentions that despite the fact that they didn't speak to him, lo yachlu dabro lishalom, all they had to do really, if both sides would have just sat down and spoken to each other, there's a very good chance that they would have been able to bring about some peace. The fact that they stayed away from each other and didn't sit down together and try to work things out, that's what brought about the catastrophe. If families, brothers, sisters, fathers, children, friends, rabbis, congregants, any interpersonal relationship, if there's a lack of talking to each other, then nothing can be accomplished that's good. While if at least you're talking, then there's a chance you could bring about le shalom. And the other point is a point that is made by Rav Kook and by the Aruch HaShulchan, Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, both great Talmidei Chachamim and leaders of Klal Yisrael. Rav Kook was once asked, why is it that you're so mekarev, so many of these people who are not observant of any of the commandments? And Rav Kook responded and said, I'd rather be accused of ahavas chinam, love for nothing, than, God forbid, accused of sinas chinam, of hatred for nothing. And the story with the Aruch HaShulchan, Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, tells us that he lived in a time at the turn of the 20th century when people were in many ways going far away, and there was some so-called maskilim that were really destroying the fabric of the unity of Orthodox Judaism. Nevertheless, he had someone who he was very close with who was, in fact, a maskil. And he once said to him, the maskil, why don't you dislike me? I'm so antithesis of what you stand for. Why is it you don't dislike me? And the Aruch HaShulchan said, I'll tell you, even if lahalacha I could, I just can't bring myself to dislike another Jew. It's impossible. You're a Jew. How can I possibly dislike you? We have to have Ahavas Yisrael. And so, despite the fact that the brothers couldn't speak in peace to Yosef and brought about a great catastrophe, we can learn how we need to talk to each other, to converse with each other, give respect to each other, love each other, so that we can bring about more unity amongst the Jewish people. V'lo yachru davro l'shalom. They could not speak to him to go to peace, but we can tell each and every one of our friends, lech l'shalom, go to peace, go to bring more peace, bring more Torah, bring more kindness, bring more unity among the Jewish people, so that we can bring about a rebuilding of the unity of Klal Yisrael, not only here in our own society, but throughout the world at large, which will bring about the ultimate shalom of the Jewish people. Good job.